Hi, my name is Maxine, and today I'm going to be reviewing some of the items that I bought in my first year of knitting and rating them as a shop or a flop. Let's go! My goal for this video is to go over tools and accessories and yarn that I bought in my first year of knitting. I bought a lot of stuff that I never actually ended up using, and I wanted to make this video to help you maybe save a few bucks if you're looking to start knitting or crocheting and aren't sure what to buy. Sometimes when you're walking around the craft store, you might think, oh, that looks cool, I'll use it for this. But when you get home and actually try to use it, it kind of doesn't work for your intended purpose. And I'm here to save you the heartbreak of that experience. In this video, I'm going to be reviewing 3 different categories. The first being needles and hooks, the second being accessories and tools, and the third being yarn. And with that said, let's get started. Yes! The first item on the docket today is going to be plastic knitting needles. These needles are the Big Twist brand, and I bought them on super sale when Joanne was in the process of closing down. They are a US 13, and I kind of just grabbed them because I figured maybe I'd be playing with some chunky knits as I learned how to knit, because the chunkier yarn might be a little bit easier for me to work with than the smaller yarn. However, after actually trying to knit flat with these, I found that the yarn just didn't slide up and down the plastic needles very well, and it just made my life really hard. So for that, I'm going to rate these a flop. The next item on this list is going to be metal flat needles. Metal flat needles are probably going to be my preferred choice if I am going to be knitting flat. However, even though these are the literal needles that I use to learn how to knit, I really just don't find them useful as I've gained a bit more skill. In all honesty, you just kind of don't really need flat needles, because anything you can do on a flat needle, you can also do on a circular needle. For that reason, and for that reason alone, I'm going to be giving these a flop. However, if you just want some easy and cheap needles to learn on and aren't really sure if you want to get circulars yet, even though you should, then for you, I will shop them. Continuing on with bamboo flat needles. Listen, I mostly bought these bamboo needles because I thought they were going to be aesthetic. We all know those YouTubers on your timeline who knit with bamboo needles and it looks super cute and they do funky stitches and you're like, oh, that must be really easy and fun, and if I get these bamboo needles, it's going to make me just like them. Stop yourself right there. Stop it. Sadly, that's just not how it works. Maybe bamboo needles are better for a certain type of yarn, but I found when I was actually learning how to knit, the acrylic yarn that I was using was getting caught on the bamboo needles and I actually couldn't slide it off very well. It's a similar problem that I had to the plastic needles. I also, I'm not gonna lie, I bought this set really cheap on Amazon, so maybe they're not the best quality bamboo needles and maybe this rating isn't totally fair. Let me know in the comments below if you have experience with bamboo needles and can maybe offer me some insight. However, at this point, I'm going to be giving them a flop. Listen, at this point we are overdue for a shop, so I'm going to present to you my personal favorite set of needles and the best purchase that I have made since I started knitting, which is a interchangeable set of circular needles. Bought this set off Amazon for maybe like $5 to $10, and it has been the set of needles that I have actually knit all of my projects on since seriously starting to knit. It comes with all of the most popular size needles that you'll probably need when you start knitting, so right off the bat it's going to give you a huge resource kit to start playing with different types of yarn, different sizes of yarn, and seeing what you actually like as you start to learn how to knit. It also comes with this really cute carrying case, and if I remember correctly, there were a couple different options you can choose from, and honestly for the price, the quality has been quite good. If you are a beginner knitter and there's one thing I would love for you to take away from this video, is get these needles now. And obviously I'm going to give these a shop. The final thing in this category is going to be a crochet hook set. So I am predominantly a knitter, however I do crochet from time to time, and buying a crochet hook set early was a huge boon to my knitting journey. I started off just using metal hooks, however I eventually invested in the Clover Amour set when they were on sale one day for I think it was 40% off. This set really has been hailed as the holy grail of crochet hooks, so I definitely don't expect you to run out and buy them right away. However, if you are a new knitter, I definitely recommend having at least one crochet hook, because a crochet hook is going to come in really handy for picking up drop stitches or making borders around your knit if you knit like blankets or scarves or anything and you want to add a border. For these reasons, a crochet hook set or even just a single crochet hook is getting a shop. Moving on to the next category is going to be supplies and accessories. One of the best things I bought early was the set of plastic stitch markers and tapestry needles. I would definitely prefer to have a metal tapestry needle just because I think it would glide through the yarn easier. However, the plastic ones that came with the set have been working just fine. I do find this set here to be a little bit excessive, and you could probably just buy a pack of like 5 to 10 stitch markers and maybe 1 or 2 tapestry needles from the craft store. However, this set was really cheap, and I feel like I will never have to buy another stitch marker ever again. My one con for this purchase is that it is a lot of plastic, and I do feel like if this container isn't clipped together properly and gets knocked over, I'm gonna have a huge mess on my hands. Thankfully, that has never happened. With that being said, this is an absolute shop. Secondly in this category, to a similar light, is going to be bone rings. So much like the plastic needles that I discussed earlier, I also bought these from Joanne when they were closing, and they were probably like $1 for the package. They were the first thing that I bought that I thought I would use as a stitch marker. And I did use them as a stitch marker when I made my first project, which was a blanket. However, because of the thickness of the bone rings, they ended up leaving gaps between my stitches where the stitch markers were placed. So now that the project is finished, I can see exactly where the bone rings were just by looking at the blanket. Mind you, it's very minuscule, and someone else probably doesn't notice it like I do. However, it is something that ended up bothering me at the end. I'm pretty sure that these bone rings serve a different purpose, and I'm not exactly sure what that is. So if you do know, leave me a note in the comments and let me know what you would use bone rings for. However, as a beginner knitter or crocheter, I am going to give these a flop. Thirdly, and much to my surprise in this category, is a sewing kit. I bought the sewing kit for like $4.99 off Amazon, and I bought it because I made a crochet hook case and I wanted to sew a button onto it. Once the sewing kit actually arrived, I was really surprised at the breadth of contents that actually came in it for such a cheap price. Having a sewing kit on hand, even though I haven't used it very much, just feels like a necessity to any crafter, and I'm just really happy that I have one in case I need it. While I don't recommend buying it until you actually need it, I am going to give this a shop because I do think every crafter should have one. Finally, for this category, we have a tension ring. This is another loose little piece of plastic that I definitely have some beef with. However, I did buy this really early in my knitting journey when I was struggling a lot to figure out my tension. Ironically, shortly after I bought this, I kind of ironed out the way that I tension my yarn, and I've actually never used it, and it's just sat in my craft bin collecting dust. For myself, I am not a continental knitter. I have tried to knit continental and it just does not work well for me. So maybe this would be a different experience if you are someone who is very dedicated to the continental cause. However, from my own experience, I am giving this a flop because I really just don't think it's necessary. Moving on to the final category, we have the yarns that I have used in my first year of knitting to actually make projects. These are all very cheap, affordable yarn. I have not been breaking the bank since I started knitting, and I really just don't feel the need to splurge at this point with where my skill level is at. I'm going to start out with the very controversial Bernet blanket yarn. I definitely recognize that there are a lot of flaws in this yarn. It is not very elastic. It could be hard to work with. However, I used this yarn for my first project to make a massive blanket on my circular knitting needles, and I actually had a lot of fun working with it. The quality of the yarn is a little bit questionable, and I did notice a lot of differences between the dye lots that I had. Some of them were really thick and fluffy, and others were really thin and stringy, and it kind of confused me. However, I ended up just working with them anyway because I bought all the colors that I needed on sale, and it was what it was at that point. If you are looking to make a big, fluffy, and comfortable blanket, I am going to give this a shop. However, if you're trying to do literally anything else with it, I would probably give it a flop. Up next is the Lionbrand Cotton 24/7 yarn. I used this yarn in one of my videos previously to make a crochet tote bag, and I am obsessed with this yarn. This yarn is so affordable and feels so nice. It is easy to use, it blocks really well, it doesn't split. It is honestly like the holy grail of yarns that I have tried in my first year of knitting. If I could use this yarn for absolutely every project, I probably would. However, sometimes it's just not the look and feel that I'm going for. But if you do want a cotton yarn, I honestly cannot recommend this one enough, and for that, I am going to give it a shop. Third on this list is the Big Twist acrylic yarn. Listen, we do a lot of warning for Joanne in this household because when I was really early in my knitting journey, Joanne was already in their bankrupt era. I'm not too sure about the availability of Big Twist in the modern day, and I'm not too sure how much Michael's or other craft stores are going to be carrying it, or how long it's even still going to be in production. But I did still want to include it in this video in case you do find it, or are still using it, or maybe bought some previously and have it in your stash. I'm a little bit mixed on this yarn because depending on the dye lot, I do find it quite splitty. I have used this yarn in 3 different colors, and I'm actually currently using this yarn to make a raglan sweater. I find that the solid color yarns have held up a little bit better than the heather style yarn that I'm currently using to make my sweater. Honestly, if I knew how splitty this yarn was before I started making my sweater, I probably never would have bought it. However, it does look really nice, so I am excited for the end product. With all that being said, I do think there are some better acrylic options, so for that reason, I'm going to give Big Twist a flop. And last but not least, we have the ever controversial Red Heart Super Saver acrylic yarn. So listen, this is a incredibly hot take, but I actually love this yarn. I used this yarn in the favorite stripe pattern to make my first raglan sweater, and I had such a good time using this yarn to make the sweater. And after I washed and dried it, the feeling of it is quite soft. The feeling of it really did surprise me because it's kind of the cheapest yarn on the market, or like one of the cheapest that you can get. And overall, it has really bad reviews across the board. But I am here in my controversial area to tell you that this yarn is a shop. If you need a quick, easy, and cheap acrylic yarn to make something in a color that you want, go off. That is all the content I have for you today. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for being here. I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel and stick around for more knitting and crochet content. I am a newer creator planning to post regularly. I am focusing on my crafting journey at the moment. However, I am planning on formulating some Let's Plays, and I kind of just like chitting and chatting into the universe kind of like this. Maybe there'll be crafting topics, or maybe they won't. If you enjoyed this video, I really would appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up, and let me know in the comments if you've tried any of these things that I've talked about, or maybe have some other things that you bought when you were a beginner crafter and either really love or really hate. If you are a beginner crafter, I hope that this video helps you make some good purchases and maybe helps you save a few bucks by not purchasing some others. Anyway, bye!